Hello.
Hello.
So nice that you accepted my invitation and wanted to have this chat with me. I will
Yeah.
shortly present myself. So, I'm Maria, and I am the most dangerous woman in Finland. And it's been quite lonely, so I want to connect with other dangerous women.
I love that. I mean, that's quite an honor. Some people work their whole lives to get a compliment like that, and you've attained it at a young age. Congratulations. That's very impressive.
Yeah, it all started when I 3 years ago released my online course, which teaches people to heal themselves. And then there has been like thousands of people who've been healing and healing and sharing their experiences. And then other people who are not on my online course, who don't know anything about the method that I teach, they have been making these reports. And I think you might have like a diagnosis for this kind of people who.
Yes, they're called severely underfucked. And the clinical modern Anami coined name is called fukme. And it could be male or female, but in this particular case, females utterly freaking out about absolutely nothing due to lack of phallic shapes near, in, or around their vaginas, leading to cataclysmic psychopathic moments of intense and troubling repressed sexual tension, otherwise known as fukme in women or mukme, M-U-K-M-E, in men, which is to say that being underfucked makes you dumb and stupid. And instead of dealing with your own stuff, you then lash out at other people and find other people to point the finger at, and you run around all day screaming at them and complaining about them and getting angry about them. It's such a sad epidemic. It is the worst epidemic in our world today, is this glut of underfucked hysterical individuals.
Yeah, and I think it costs a lot for the society too, because my case, like the official safety officials, they gave me 100,000 penalty fine because and they saw that my course was like completely safe, but they gave me this penalty fine so that in the future I wouldn't say anything dangerous. And of course, I took that to the higher official court, and they said that it's completely ridiculous that you cannot do that. And yeah, so fuck. How was it?
Fukme.
Fuck me.
Fukme with the umlaut over the U.
Okay.
Fukme or mukme.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, that was a little bit about me. And I love now connecting with other dangerous people. And I also want to really present you to the Finnish audience, because there are lots of people who really understand what's going on. And there's also the people who think we're dangerous, but it's nice to see that there, yeah, other dangerous women in the world too. I'm not the only one. And yeah, now I would like to hear about um, your vaginal kung fu program. I've also like done a little bit of it, and now I really feel that I need more information.
Right. So, what exactly would you like to know?
Um, yeah, I've heard that, or I've seen that you also speak about healing, and so I'm really interested in what kind of healing have people experienced doing your methods, and it's like, yeah, yeah. How do you think about healing? And
Well, let's start with the notion that I would say that a person who is sexually in tune with themselves and understands the power of that is more dangerous than anybody. And that's why sexuality has been so suppressed and censored and had so much taboo and shame woven over it. And I believe that we are all sexual, voracious, healthy beings. And yet, with all of the challenges that most people face around their sexuality, it's very difficult for them to connect to that energy. And there's all of this cultural reinforcement that discourages them from connecting to it, whether it's self-judgment or judgment of other people, their own trauma that they've experienced over the years. And I say this is really the most successful psyop in the world, because do you know the term psyop?
Yes.
Like psychological operation. It's a deliberate agenda.
Yeah.
To, you know, put forward some ideas and beliefs. And in this case, the psyop is teaching people that this energy source, their sexual energy, their life force energy, the energy that creates new life. And I teach people, if you're not making babies with that energy, you can be using it as a creative manifesting source to create the life that you want, you know, outside of just children. And so if that energy is freely available, the biggest free energy source on the plane to everyone and literally located at your fingertips, how crazy is it that most people feel so separated from this energy, so disconnected from their own bodies that they could, it's almost like that source could be a million miles away in terms of how disconnected they feel. So it's a very successful agenda, right? All of the shame and the taboo and the fear and the anxiety and the trauma that surrounds it. And so my work is busting through all of that, helping people to see through those illusions and that misinformation. That's the true misinformation, anything that keeps us from our own power, which is what's happened to you as well, and help them to understand the truth of their own bodies. And so, you know, my work is about getting people back in touch with their sexual selves, with their sexual energy, with their genitals, with their bodies, so that they can truly feel that life force running through them and learn how to harness it consciously as a creative power in all parts of their lives. And so when that happens, not only do people experience healing in their sex lives, like let's say, you know, a couple is in a sexless marriage or not very happy marriage, though they can revitalize their marriage. But then it goes much further than that, where their bodies start to change. People will often lose weight because all of this baggage that they've been holding on to in the ethers, or that's stored in their body, in their tissues, like Wim Hof likes to say, the issues in our tissues, that stuff gets alchemized and metabolized and then transformed into this utilizable life force energy, rather than heaviness and baggage that weighs us down. We'll watch people, health issues will shift. So let's say, I say that any kind of reproductive ailment, from difficult periods, PMS, menopause, low lubrication, low libido, growths that form on the reproductive organs, all of these things are symptomatic of stuck sexual energy. And when people get that energy back in motion, these ailments just evaporate, right? They're not doing particular things to address them, even in the holistic field. I mean, those things I support and I think they help on the journey, but they're not, the true work is the higher level psychosomatic, emotional, spiritual, energetic work. And once that happens, everything filters down into the physical, and that becomes much smoother. So health issues shift. And another beautiful thing that will happen is people will, because the sexual energy is this true expression of who we are, people will find themselves making life choices that are more in alignment with their deepest truth and their deepest self. So a great example of that is, let's say somebody's working in a job that's a 9 to 5, pay the bills, like gotta do it kind of job. They'll end up leaving that work and gravitating naturally towards something that's more truthful for them, like a job that's more in line. The Sanskrit word is dharma, which means the gifts of who we are, expressing our true gifts into the world, the purpose that we are here to do and fulfill in this plane. And so that's one of my favorite things to watch, because I love watching people come into their true self-actualization. So getting in touch with your sexual energy not only heals from a deep physical and energetic and emotional standpoint, but there's this ripple effect into every other part of your existence, because you're now infusing all of this life force, vitality, inner truth truth into your whole life. And so the results can be nothing short of miraculous, because people don't make that connection, because a lot of people, most people, are taught that sex, even though sex is everywhere and it sells, everything from toilets to sports cars to lingerie to alcohol, you're also taught that it's really bad and you shouldn't really have it that much, right? But then it's everywhere, right? It's in pop songs, media, advertising. There's like naked people fucking all over the place, and yet you're not allowed to really do it. And so that even that dichotomy is a head fuck for most people until they consciously bust through it and figure it out. So, people don't make that association that having a really clogged up sex life will pull everything in their life into it like a black hole. And then the opposite happens when people get in touch with that energy. It revitalizes and uplifts every other part of their life.
Wow. Yeah, true. What do you think? In my method, I use like gratitude, this really deep gratitude. And I think that gratitude is like getting aroused of the world. So are we talking, is gratitude, what do you think? Is it also a life force? Is it sexual energy?
Well, I don't think I've ever put the term sexual associated with it, but personally, but I can see what you're saying is that when I think you're in gratitude, you're opening yourself up to receive. You're acknowledging that you've received something. And that energy of receiving is really the energy of surrender. There's a surrender connected to it. And I speak about in my work how the deepest levels of sexual expression are all about surrender, opening yourself. And I talk about the parallels between the spiritual and the sexual. And the deepest places that we get to spiritually are when we open ourselves to the divine. We surrender, we open, we let go. And same thing sexually. We get to these deep, transformative, life-changing places when we open and we surrender and we let go. So I think the energetic action and property and result is very much the same.
Wow. So, yeah, I just want to know, how has the media treated you? Because for me, it's been quite harsh, but is it the same in other?
Well, back in like 2014, 2015, 2016, I had a bunch of viral media campaigns happen where I was lifting weights with my vagina. I had this Instagram hashtag, things I lift with my vagina, that featured me traveling around the world, lifting various objects indigenous to different regions with my vagina. So in Italy, I lifted a Murano glass chandelier. In Venice and San Marco Square. In Berlin, I lifted a piece of the Berlin Wall. At the Berlin Wall. In Bali, I lifted all kinds of tropical fruits, things like that. And that went highly viral. It's like it kind of took the world by storm. And I had amazingly positive media coverage in every corner of the world. I had, interviews coming in from Taiwan to Brazil to Spain to, all over the place. And it was extremely positive. And then I would say that lately, in this time of these social justice psyops, that I've spoken out about a few of those and refused to bend the knee, if you will, then I've had a couple of like lashings out, at me for that, because I refuse to buy into any of that. And I certainly do not apologize for just being who I am. So that's garnered some negativity, but not not my work so much, right? There's been at times some smear campaigns, like for example, when Gwyneth Paltrow, I'd been, talking about and using the jade egg and went viral for these campaigns with the jade egg. And she, beautiful, there it is. And she put out an interview on her website about it, and someone spoke about it. And that received some negative press because she gets targeted by all of these, I would call them paid trolls on the internet, right? Who they can't even call them doctors. They're like WHO RES, they're whores, bought and paid for by the WHO RES. But they're not actually medical professionals. They're just fucking morons, right? They're just whores who bend over and you shove money up their crotch and they'll say anything you want. So they go after these holistic practitioners and try to discredit them, right? So there was this, argument out there at that time. And I challenged one of these people, a so-called OBGYN, but really just an internet troll. I challenged her $100,000 US. I said, if we put my clients up against your clients, my clients are going to win in everything from vaginal strength, vaginal lubrication, increased libido, increased sex life, better marriages, reduction of growths on the reproductive organs, no menopause, like every single category. I would win. Get rid of urinary incontinence, no pelvic organ prolapse. And then she just ignored that because that was like obvious that I would win. So there's been a few little tussles, over the years where I have refused to back down and called out, right? Starting like calling out some of this hypocrisy and frankly crime, right? It's basically this is just criminal thuggery, we'll call it for what it is. So at times when I've come up against that, there's been maybe a little bit of tussle, but and so these days I think the only media attention is like if you whine and you're a victim, right? Like victimhood gets all the media attention right now. So if you profess self-responsibility like I do, and radical self-responsibility, I think similar to what the things are that you teach, that will be sidestepped because that doesn't fit the ethos of the time, nor the whole allopathic structure of being a perpetual victim for your entire life.
Yeah, I don't know. Why would it be dangerous to have your own power? It's like, I don't know. Yeah, but
well, I think we all know why, right? Because you are a challenge to the powers that be, to the people who try to encourage and brainwash everyone to think that they have no power. And so a person who understands they have all the power is very dangerous because that will infect other people in the most beautiful way, right? That's the infection that everyone's terrified of, is free thinking, intelligent, self-possessed, sovereign individuals. That's the most dangerous infection there is. To an actual, fake, how can we say this? Illness machine. That its purpose is to generate mental illness and physical illness and emotional illness. That's all it does. So you as the cure, or me as the cure for that, are very dangerous, very scary to them, but liberating to us.
So, okay, now I want to go to the theme of inner power. So I speak a lot about the power of the mind, but I think it's really connected with the power that you teach, like the physical power. And I have here the egg. Wow. Can you tell me a little bit about it? This.
Well, you are holding the legendary jade yoni egg. So that's a piece of jade that's carved into the shape of an egg. And it goes inside the vagina as a vaginal strengthening device. And this has been used for over 5,000 years in ancient Taoist China, in the time when they were creating their medical systems in acupressure, acupuncture, herbal medicine. They looked at sex as medicine, as a way to rejuvenate and heal yourself. And having strong genitals and activating your pelvic floor and strengthening it with the jade egg was considered to be necessary practice for women. And men have their own genital strengthening practices, and I teach both. But in this case, with the jade egg, that very simple tool with very little work, 10 minutes 3 to 4 times a week, will give women a powerful, strong pelvic floor. I have seen women eliminate urinary incontinence within 1 week of using the jade egg, prevent and reverse pelvic organ prolapse, bring sensation back into the vagina, increase their orgasmic potential, allow them to have G-spot, ejaculatory, and cervical orgasms, increase lubrication in the vagina. It does all of these things. It's one of the most powerful, it's the most dangerous thing in the world by our definitions for women.
And what is this?
That is a silk string. So that's what you thread the egg with. And then you can attach objects to the end of the string. And what you have there is a satin pouch, and there's rose quartz stones inside of it. And that's what you can actually use as weights to start your weight training practice.
Wow, perfect. So, yeah, I saw you posting a video and there was like money flowing. So, what's the connection?
So in the chakra system, the second chakra is sex, money, and creativity. And so the example that I gave earlier about how people come to be in alignment with their true gifts and the kind of work and vocation that they're really meant to be doing here, that then is correlated with money and abundance coming to you. And so the more you're living in alignment with your truth, the universe supports that, and it supports it in actual abundance. So that can be money, that can be opportunities, that can be people who come into your life. And we often hear from our students, like the female students who work with the Jade Egg, they'll say, and then this money just fell into my lap, or this job offer just fell into my lap, or this apartment just fell into my lap. And I say, yes, because your lap is what attracted it, right? Your vagina, your lit, activated, magnetic vagina drew this to you into your space.
I do like on my online course, there's lots of scientific like backup to all the things that I speak. And I talk a lot about microbes. And I bet you're interested in this study. It's actually a Finnish study. And it says that like the socio-economical status of a woman is connected to the microbiome health, like the richness of the microbiome of the vagina. And I think this because it's known that like the richer your microbiome is, the healthier you are, the happier you are. And of course, I think that we can affect like with our mind and thoughts to the microbes that live in our bodies, because like all the surfaces of our body is full of microbes, and they feel what we feel. Like they feel our emotions, they feel also our shame. So if we feel ashamed of our sexuality, so there'll be less microbes and not so good microbes. But I think that like the scientists don't know why these two things are connected. But for me, it's really clear that it's the emotions that are balanced. And also, I guess that with the just like the physical exercising, of course, and you add the spiritual side to it, but you will like change the actual like habitat of your vagina so that it will attract actually the microbes too. And when you get a richer microbiome, then you become richer in other ways too. What do you think?
I love that. Yeah, I'd love to see that study. I haven't heard that before, but I love that notion. And I think it speaks to that mind-body correlation, right? That things that are happening and changing in the mind affect the body and vice versa, and becomes a beautiful circle and cycle. But, as above, so below. Right? As we become mentally and emotionally stronger and more resilient, we are, Bruce Lipton talks about that. We're changing the environment and the actions of all of the cells in our body. They listen to our commands. And if, yes, we're commanding shame and embarrassment and depression, they carry out those instructions. And if we're commanding bliss and happiness and power and strength, then they carry those out too.
Yeah. So do you combine visualizations to the exercises?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, I could just sell people an egg and a bunch of, audio instructions about exercises, but I would never do that because I don't think that would be very effective. And so the way that I teach the Jade Egg work is with full emotional, mental, energetic components to help them heal from everything from different types of sexual trauma and blocks that they've internalized in themselves, and then learn how to really tap into that energy and power. And a huge way to do that is through visualization, right? Because visualization is really like a reprogramming of the psyche, of the cells of the subconscious where all of these things emanate from. So yeah, I find them a very essential part of the work. And then I have a bunch of them that I've created that are throughout the salon that help women to tap into that energy and then can use these methods for life.
Yeah. Wow. So then I have like a personal question. Um, I have 4 children, and 2 youngest ones were born at home. And after the fourth one, he's now 7 months. I like the 2 latest births, they were like super ecstatic home births. Like I really, it was like maximum pleasure, like really orgastic births. And I have my theory, but what I think I want to hear your diagnosis. Like after the fourth one, I feel that I need like something more because the birth actually it felt like God was fucking me from the inside. So now I feel that I want that extreme pleasure. So what could I do to get it back?
So you're saying that you had these ecstatic experiences in birth,
Yeah.
and now you want to know how to have that all the time?
Yeah, maybe. Yes. Yes.
I mean, look, I think that birth and especially like ecstatic orgasmic births really are peak life experiences.
Mm.
But the next best thing would be having cervical orgasms regularly. And do you have cervical
Yeah, I
orgasms?
think yes, I do have cervical orgasms, but like maybe it's that I need more strength, like physical strength.
Possibly. I mean, that like the most people, most women are numb in their vaginas, right? They don't have just like okay, like the example of having a hand here, right? Most women when they're having sex, they're receiving pleasure and touch, right? They're really focusing on that sensation rather than having a vagina that's really articulate and agile like a hand. The expression is playing the flute. So imagine being able to isolate different areas of your vagina one at a time and squeeze. Or imagine being able to squeeze and milk so hard that you could give your man an orgasm by pulsing with your vagina, or that you could stop him from ejaculating by holding him so tight in your grip, right? So I think that's definitely part of it, that level of reconnection to the vagina and strengthening it and having that activation and awareness within it. And then I think maybe deeper levels of cervical orgasms, because the more that women are like cervical orgasms are really the best preparation for having an orgasmic and ecstatic birth, because that portal is opening, right? With birth, the cervix is opening and we're, peeking through that plane, that window of existence through life and death into the other worlds. But we have a level of that happening with cervical orgasms as well, where we're tapping into that portal and that crown chakra, channel that's going all the way up through us, from the cervix, taking its way through the vagus nerve, which is thought to be the most spiritual nerve in the body, coming up through the heart and right up to the crown. And so we have these I saw God kind of experience. And people will often say that. You say that about being like fucking God. And people talk about that, right? Is like they feel like they've connected to God. They have these transcendent spiritual experiences through cervical orgasms. And so I would say perhaps there's just more levels for you to go in terms of getting to deeper levels of surrender and opening in your cervical orgasms.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that it was like an invitation to
Yeah,
to
it's
like
beautiful.
go deeper. And
Love that.
yeah. Oh, so wonderful. What's coming? So, yeah. Do you want to tell like something more about the vaginal kung fu that is coming?
Yeah, so the Vaginal Kung Fu program, it opens for registration this week, actually Wednesday, the 18th of January, and it's open until I believe like for 2.5 weeks. And then it's an 8-week online program that's all things vaginal and sexual reconnaissance. And so, as I said, it's focused around the jade egg and learning how to use it and exercise with it. But there's also Pilates exercises that go into that as complementary, strengthening the core, breast massage, all kinds of self-pleasuring techniques and work, and learning how to really connect with the body, learning how to block or discover and then clear different sexual blockages. So the things that impede us from really getting in touch with that sexual energy, we talk about that connection between sex and money, and truly using your vagina and your reproductive organs as these magnets to bring opportunities and manifestation into your life, and learning how to consciously use your sexual energy as a creative tool, right? I often say to people, if you've had sex, do you feel and or self-pleasured? Do you feel energized, rejuvenated, blissful, ecstatic, and like your life has changed? If not, you're doing it wrong. And that just means that there's ways of having sex that deplete you and you lose energy, versus you feel totally activated and like you want to go and do things. You want to go and create things. You want to go to the gym. You want to write. You want to do, use that energy in some way. So I'm teaching people to consciously learn how to use it as a creative power. So all of that and much more. So it's housed in a private members area on my website. We have what we call an inner circle forum. And so there's a place for women to connect outside of the main videos that you watch, and you have home play and guided visualization audios and resources that you receive throughout the program. You get that beautiful jade egg kit that you were just showing us. And then every week we have Q&A calls where you can ask me anything, as well as bodacious breakout calls where the women have a chance to separate out into their own rooms and have discussions on their own. And everybody loves that so much. Is like, where can you have these conversations about your vagina and your sex life and your partner and, all these things that are happening in your body that aren't common conversation. They are for me, but they aren't for most people.
Yeah, it sounds so juicy to have a place where you can talk about this freely, in an environment that you can trust and know that they understand you. I actually got a message from a guy. He was asking, like, do you have something for men too?
I do. I have a course called Sexual Mastery for Men, and that is similar to this, in that I teach penile weightlifting for the men, but it's also all about how they can build stamina, better techniques to be an amazing lover and pleasure their women, how to really occupy their masculine energy. Like part of what we talked about earlier, these different psyops of control taking place in the world. One of them is trying to extinguish the masculine, extinguish the feminine and the masculine, and make everyone neutral. But in particular, if we remove the assertive, powerful man from our world, then we no longer have protectors. We no longer have guardians. No one is holding down that space. And so I'm a huge supporter of restoring and encouraging that in men. And that's part of what we go into in that salon as well.
Yeah, I think that many like health issues that women have are also because they have to take that masculinity, like too much structure and power. And yeah, for example, I had one lady, she had even like mustache growing and like really masculine like face, and she started doing it. After 1 year, her face changed much more feminine. And I think there are many like different health issues that are because of that. So if you're suffering for that, yeah, no, just take responsibility yourself, and then maybe your husband can see it and start doing it.
Well, that's what, I'm a huge proponent of, is men really like and celebrating men and celebrating women in the masculine and feminine, and really appreciating that and the gifts that are in that for us, right? And so I have another class called Coming Together for Couples, which runs in April, and that's obviously like for men and women, but really focuses on that relationship, that divine play between the masculine and the feminine, and how to use that as a power source, use your relationship as a power source, rather than this, neutralization that we're seeing going on right now, right? That's saying it's like, it's this craziness.
Yeah, you can see it every day in the news. But hey, one question more. Like, I know that many women are ready to, like, I want to change my sex life and I want to start taking these courses and do it. And then the guy is like, yeah, let's see. And yeah, I'm so surprised that, like, I thought that like guys would be like straight away, like, yes, yes, I want to do it. But what do you do if your partner isn't that much into it?
That's a very good question. I would invite them to listen to some of my podcasts. And I have a podcast called Orgasmic Enlightenment, and my YouTube channel, Anami, because I have tons of free material out there that is designed to do just this, to kind of bring people into this, starting to open them up to these ideas. And so I have videos just for the ladies to give their men. One is called Magical Blowjobs. Right. So you can tell your guy, you can say, look, there's this woman and she thinks that I should be giving you more oral sex. Do you think we should listen to some of her videos? This woman says that I ought to be swallowing your ejaculate. Do you think we should listen to that podcast episode she's got? I made these just for you ladies, just for this purpose, for you to give these to your man and go, should we check her out? She's kind of interesting, right? And see what your man says then. There's one called Vitamin BJ on my YouTube channel, one called Magical Blowjobs, the Holy Fuck. I mean, go through and find the titles that you think would most turn on your man, right? To make it sound like, because he will. It's not like it's not a trick, right? Like these are all legit things, but they will understand that you're not just trying to make them change, right? This is going to be an epic journey for them as well as you.
Yeah, great. I think like, and yeah, I think the problem might be if the men are like really skeptic and don't believe in the, chakras or energy system. So
You
how do
don't
you soften
You
them?
don't have to believe in that. Like, I made that comment earlier with us, but I don't usually use that language. My language is much more direct and to the point. And yes, I'm spiritual, but very practical. And so men generally love my work because I can guy talk with the best of them, right? Like, I have a very high proportion of men in my work as well as women because I can speak to both. And so the guys come into my work and they're not put off by my spiritual language because they know that everything I say is pretty much backed up by either vast amounts of experience and anecdotal evidence in the people I've worked with, and or science, just not the kind that bends over and takes it up the ass. I mean like real science, right? Like actual science, right? So it's a mix of everything. And so I would just like, again, just try an episode, play an episode and hear me and what I talk about. And if you really feel like it's not for you, so be it. But I think most people would have their interest piqued and feel like, hey, this is the thing that I've been looking for that I haven't been able to find. Because I think most people deep down, they intuit and they know the truth that their sex life and their sexual energy is meant to be this very transformative, powerful, profound experience. And the stuff that we're presented, right? Like the very superficial junk food versions of sex aren't real. They're not actually what nourishes us. And even if we don't know what else there is, well, that's the issue, right? And then once people see what else there is, they very quickly go, that's the thing that I've been intuitively feeling about sex, but didn't know how to articulate because there's no framework out there to have that conversation in a more elevated way, except in my work.
Yeah. Still questions, because I think that all our illnesses are because our defense mechanism has misinterpreted something. So it might be that our defense system thinks that sex is dangerous and it will protect us from it. So like starting, it's like going to the uncomfort zone. Do you
Well, I think so many people have had trauma connected to their sexuality that might be the case, or they've even got ancestral trauma that's still encoded in their cells of sexual abuse, because one of the fastest ways to take over or invade a population is to sexually destroy them, right? They go in, like even historically, go in and rape the women, rape the children, like all the Christian missionaries, that's all they did. They went around the world fucking children, torturing them and destroying all of these indigenous populations. And so, that's a strategy, right? So we have that trauma, I think, so much within our systems, our genetic coding, all through the ethers. And so it's a legitimate hesitation or block that people come against. And that's when I encourage you to see it as such, right? See it as a blockage that is a manufactured blockage, meaning like it's not innate. We are not innately afraid of sex. Look at animals, right? Like that's pure instinct. No one's teaching them how to do these things. They figure out sex, they figure out birth, like they don't need any help. They don't need their babies cut out of them, but humans do. Why is that? Because we're so separated from that truth of who we are. And so, or we're lied to get them cut out, whatever, because it costs, the OBGYN makes more money and gets home in time to watch, TV at 5 o'clock. So, got to do a C-section. So they run home. So, I mean, it's like, feel that fear and do it anyway. That notion of, I will walk you through those blockages and walk you through that programming so that you can bust through the other side of it, and get to know yourself and trust in that power and sanctity of your sexual energy.
Wow. And so now you talked about animals. So animals, they learn to do it without anything. So what do you think? Should we talk about sex to kids anyway, or teenagers, or should they just find it out?
Well, the unfortunate thing now is that the other modeling out there is so horrendous, like the access to porn at a young age, the real emphasis on like hookup culture, is that you can't just let them figure it out because that's what they're going to absorb. Where animals don't have like porn stars in the barn, over here, or here's a part of the forest where, all these animals are, putting on whatever like sex shows and stuff, right? They don't have all these mutations of their sexuality that humans do. So I think the primary responsibility with educating children does come from the parents. And I would be as open as you can from a young age, right? So that your children know you have sex because you love each other. And sex is an expression of love and intimacy. And a couple with a very powerful sexual bond creates the container for their family. You are the protection. You are the crucible for your entire family unit. And if you and your partner are off kilter, that off kilter energy permeates into your children. They will be, like they will act out, they'll have behavior issues, they'll have health issues, and that's all coming from you as a couple. I'm telling you that, right? So it's about taking radical self-responsibility to clean up your own self and your own relationship, both individually and collectively as a unit. And then to be totally opening and welcoming and non-judgmental about all things sexual, and always invite that openness and that curiosity and the questions from your children, right? So they know that their parents love each other. Their parents are making out in the kitchen, you don't have to be hiding that from them. I'm not saying to be like drop down on the floor and have sex in the kitchen with your, kids there watching, but I'm saying that, I grew up thinking like watching so many parents, including my own, hiding the fact that they had sex. Right? Like you would just never, like the door would be closed sometimes. And that was kind of all you knew, rather than a sense that my parents are really into each other, And some people might have grown up with that. I didn't. I feel like that energy around the time of my upbringing was like, you just hid that from kids, right? You hid that. And so the more open you can be, I have a wonderful podcast interview called How to Speak to Your Children About Sex. And it's exactly that, where, you know, how to be open, and interviewing a couple where they have a very like, you know, free flowing, open communication relationship within the whole family. And everyone knows, even where they work together, and they have a room that they go to make love in the office.
I
Everyone
was,
knows.
yeah,
Like, you know, it's just a very like natural thing for them.
yeah. Still, our children think that we meditate a lot. Well,
Well, it's sexual meditation, you know, and then at some
yeah,
point you can explain it is meditation.
it
This is
is.
your
It
sexual,
is.
your intimate, whatever you want to call it, your connecting dates, your intimate meditation that you do with each other. And in fact, that's a lovely framework,
Yeah,
intimate meditation, you
yeah.
know?
Hey, then I have one more question. It might be, well, let's see. But this is something I've talked a little bit and I got lots of like misunderstandings. But let's see what you think. Because I think that if people have like fantasies that are like hurting themselves or other, or like putting down, well, yeah, that's some kind of a sign of an emotion that needs to be healed. And so that the best thing wouldn't be to follow that fantasy, but like somehow alchemize it to love and acceptance or something like that. What do you think about fantasies that are hurting or, you know, somehow negative?
Well, I guess it depends on the fantasy, but I think that to a degree, it can be very cathartic, and the alchemy can happen in the acting out of the fantasy with, you know, this a safe, committed partner, right? In an environment that you feel very safe in. I've seen that be a very powerful tool. I mean, at the same time, I encourage people not to live in fantasy. Like if they need fantasy to be able to self-pleasure or to be able to have sex, then I would question that. But if you're consciously saying, let's have a scenario where we go into this fantasy together, and we're going to know what's going to happen. We've talked about it to some degree. We have it, we go into these roles, and then come out of it and debrief and talk about it. I think that can be very profound and very healing, because it's visceral healing in the body, and it's done consciously with intention. So to me, there's a difference about using
Yeah.
fantasy in a very conscious way to have healing versus using fantasy in an unconscious way to
Yeah.
escape and not be in the body.
Yeah. And one interesting thing still is like sex and neuroplasticity. Because I know that the hormones that are produced are the hormones that help our brain to form new connections. So, like I always say that it's good to do things differently, that don't always do the same thing. What do you think?
Um, Definitely. And I think if you're really in tune with your own body and your energy, and you're working on evolving as a person in other ways, right? Like in all parts of your life, I think you'll just show up with different energies and different desires and different ideas and expressions of your sexuality, so long as you feel confident to fully express those. And so you wouldn't be, you know, stuck in a rut. If you aren't stuck in a rut, and your partner's not stuck in a rut, and your relationship isn't stuck in a rut, your sex life won't be stuck in a rut. But if all those things are stuck, you probably will repeat things over and over again. But if you're evolving and changing, I think that shows up in the same way in your bed.
Hmm. Yeah. So what would be the like I always say that it's good to brush your teeth with the other hand. So in sexual life, should I try do it with
Yeah,
self pleasure with different hands and
sure. You could self-pleasure with a different hand. You could even a simple act like putting on a blindfold.
yeah,
would change, like for you or your partner, would just change the sensory experience entirely. Because let's say you're used to taking in all this information with your eyes, you
Yeah.
remove that, and then your hearing becomes different, your sense of touch becomes different, and taste, all these other sensations are more amplified because you removed one of them. Right? Or you could even try the same thing, like, plugging your, I'd be harder to plug your ears successfully, but I suppose you could put headphones on with like um some binaural beats or something, right? So you're getting some, there's all kinds of things. Like even that question is a really valuable one that you're asking, is like, how could you change something to make it a little bit different? And maybe that's where you have sex. Like for me, my motto used to be anywhere but a bed. I really hated that idea of like, okay, we're going to have sex now, we go to the bed. I'd be like, I'd rather that you just took me in the car, in the backyard, on the kitchen counter, in the moment, instead of like, okay, we go to the bed. Like, that would just turn me off. I don't have, I'm not that much, it doesn't really bother me as much now, but I'm still a big fan of that spontaneous taking, like we feel it, let's do that, like is pretty much right here as much as we can. And so I think to continually ask that question is really powerful. And to know, like one of the arguments sometimes people try to make is like, oh, you're not really meant to be with one person, your whole life. And I said, well, if you're committed to stagnation, you're with the same person. But if you're committed to growth and evolution, you're always changing, you're always unfolding and becoming the best version and a different version of who you are. Then you're not with the same person for 5 years or 10 years or 30 years.
Yeah. And letting your partner also to change.
Yes, then you're both different people all the time. And like I said, I think that carryover then happens in bed. If all of that change is happening outside of bed, it cannot help but infuse itself into your intimate life as well.
Yeah. So the last question. I know that you're not a medical professional, nor a doctor, but I would like to know.
Actually, I'm Dr. Kim Anami, and I work for the CUFDC, the Center for Underfucked Disease Control. So ask away.
So how many orgasms a day or a week would you prescribe me? Or any women with 4 children and a job?
Look, I mean, if you're having really high level cervical orgasms, you could like very easily be nourished by, I'd say, like two or three a week, right? I often recommend, if people can, it's making love every day. Well, it's not if you can, it's if you choose to. Like, I think that making love every day is a beautiful way to just reconnect and recharge with each other. But in terms of the nourishing power of really good cervical orgasms, a really good cervical orgasm, the effects of that can last for several days. So you could get by on two a week, right? If they're really, really amazing and transformative. And, I often recommend that couples plan for a much longer, extended 3-hour sex date. And let's say you had one 3-hour sex date a week in which you had one or several really cataclysmic cervical orgasms, that could probably even get you through the week. I'd rather see you have at least another even shorter date in the week sometime, but it would be a pretty good filler, to keep you nourished.
And is this like a prescription for the whole life or a year or what? How long do you have
for the whole life?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If you think about your relationship and your sexual energy as being your recharging station, right? Like another form of food and energy and nourishment, then we would go there every week. We would go there every few days. We would go there potentially every day to get this recharge, just the way we eat food every day, or we meditate every day, or we exercise every day, or almost every day, right? We do all those things for a purpose. If we trained our brains to think about sex in the same way as giving us so much vital, luscious, powerful energy, why wouldn't we be doing it every day, you know, or every other day. Like I'd say like a minimum sex 3 to 4 times a week. If you are having epic, life-changing cervical orgasms, then, you know, 2 times a week for those would probably do the trick.
Oh, okay. Wow, thank you so much, Kim Anami. I'm really
My
grateful.
pleasure.
Yeah.
From one dangerous woman to another, it's an absolute pleasure.
Ah, and thank you to all who've been watching it. And yeah, wow, we'll continue. Bye.
Bye.
Mm.